I'm going to try and find it. I probably won't, so I'm going to be embarrassed here. I'm sorry. But basically, what it says is this. You protect your trades and your manufacturing so that we might have an industrial base to protect this nation from tyranny without and within. Because George Washington sat down with these men too. George Washington fought one of the nastiest wars in the history of this nation for 2 years with no supplies, no support, and what traditionally was what were called bloody footprints in the snow. Men fought with no shoes in the middle of winter. People died never to be found in whole groups, starved to death in the forsaken places of this nation. And when he was done, George Washington understood, because we were beholden to another superpower of its day, France. And while we certainly honored our friends for their help, we also understood that they were still a monarchy. And because of that, they could not suffer with that stick in their throat. And one of the keys was to ensure that our patents and that our industrial people, and I don't mean the big industrialists, we're talking about manufacturing in general, was maintained so that we would be capable of defending ourselves. You're sitting in the motor capital. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not the motor capital anymore. Well, you're sitting in some capital. Well, you're sitting close to Detroit. Well, it's kind of close to Detroit, but Detroit's getting smaller. Well, you're sitting pretty close to the city of Detroit. And every day we're losing how many factories? Not just to Mexico, but to Japan or to China, and more so to China. Now, even if you don't believe in all this conspiracy stuff that everybody's always talking about, and everybody poo-poos, especially Rush Limbaugh, who will not let you talk about it at all, by the way, and don't mention New World Order. I got to bring that in too. Have you noticed? George, don't mention New World Order on Rush Limbaugh. Isn't that kind of strange? It was George Bush who used it, kids. And it's strangely enough, it's now Bill Clinton who's using it too. The party on the left is now the party on the right. That's right. The New World Order. Now, may I remind you of something about these industries going to China and going to Japan? Who moved all his money there? Mr. Rockefeller. Who's helping to destroy it? He helped to build the UN. He also created, and I've said this before, but let's do this for the sake of everybody who's not here. Sony, what does it mean? Standard Oil of New York. Mr. Rockefeller created it in 1947. Its mission was to strip the industrial high-tech out of the United States. You're all old enough to remember our favorite little key phrase, you all want a Sony of your own. In 1947, there weren't many televisions made, but where were they made? Here in the United States. In 1967, Japan was already getting a toehold with the very phrase that I used. That same year, VHS, or a little earlier, VHS or beta systems, were starting to come into popularity to a limited extent. Where were all the VHS heads made at that time? In the United States. Where are all of the VHS heads made now? Japan, and perhaps China too. What about them? No, I'm sorry. Well, the problem is this. The point I'm trying to make is that every high-tech advantage that we have had has been systematically, through the use of these shadow companies, been taken out of the United States by allowing our patents to be infringed upon in a very legal manner. And once acquired, using dumping techniques, etc., a systematic economic attack took place. Not a myopic little attack by the Japanese, but a systematic attack by individuals whose mission it was to draw the industry out of the United States. Not a 2-year plan, not a 4-year plan, nothing that short, but a decade, half-century, and century plan. Remember that. Now, did they have a timetable? Yes, they did. As an intelligence analyst, I'll explain to you very quickly what we call timelines are set up with what you've heard hundreds of times before in the media, windows of opportunity. What a window of opportunity means is that a series of actions are taking place in a convolution of organizations to culminate in a cul-de-sac whereby all of those resources are brought to bear into a focal point. Now, you don't just plan one window of opportunity. Would that not be foolishness if you are trying to endeavor in anything? You create a series of windows of opportunity. And if you're long-term in planning, you stretch these events out so that they appropriately take certain activities and bring them into your sphere of influence. That can be put to military application, that can be put to economic and industrial application, or political application. It makes no difference. What we have done, or forced, and in fact I think been very successful at, is we've been trying to force them to crunch their windows of opportunity. So when I said earlier, isn't it strange how quickly they're working? The reason that this has happened is that by forcing back different activities, example, how many here were involved with the Constitutional Convention amendments? I was. There's some people here who are key to that, though, or are here tonight, who are instrumental in this activity, and thank God they were here, or we'd be in pretty tough shape right now. So they are already trying it, and they have done it in many fronts. But by holding back this con, we have pushed them back in an area. By doing this, we have bunched up another activity, one against the other. NAFTA did not go through as quickly. The crime bill, quote-unquote crime bill, in other words, the Making Americans Criminals bill, where all of us will be criminals for getting together, 10 or more, this piled up also. And what has happened now is that a series of activities have culminated in what I said before as a nexus, a boiling point. You have been successful. If you have been involved in this fight, if you have opened your mouth even once, you have been successful. You are doing an excellent job. And some of us open our mouth a few more than one time. For a long time. But we can see the fruits of our labor, even if they will never admit to them. Because in forcing them to do what they are doing now, they must expose and peel away more of the mask. And more of the devil is showing. More of the beast that we are facing is exposed. His true nature, because they do not want us to think 4 years down the road. They do not want us to think 10 years down the road. What we've done is compress this so that now they must either, as we say, poop or get off the pot. And because of this, they are in a situation where they cannot back down. They cannot back down. Can you imagine the resources that have been spent? Think of what has been faced against you in this country. How much? How much time? Just think of the cost of 1 minute of media time right now. If you were to turn on Channel 7 or Channel 4, it costs you close to $1 million for a minute of prime time. And yet how many people here have seen anti-gun articles, the likes of which should have been in the editorial page, not in the reporting page? Yes. How many glorious pro-NAFTA articles have you seen? Calculate the minutes into millions. Calculate the cost of sticking a knife in the right politician here because he was just a tad too curious. Or making sure that another one is properly blackmailed. Or making sure that others are coerced in different ways. Or paying them off. Or bribing them. Or whatever. The numbers are phenomenal. They have taken all of their resources, collected them, and pointed them at this objective. And still they have not succeeded. Imagine, if you will. Think about it. They are scared to death of you as a free citizen. Free energy, free resource. So much so now that they must run with the ball. Run and don't dribble. That's what this is all about. Consider it this way. Just in this next 2 weeks, they now only have 8 to 10 real business days in which to finish everything that you've seen in the media. With no confusion, by the way. Have you ever noticed this? I'll give you another example, because boy, I'm throwing a lot of stuff out here, so let's throw this into the formula too. If I ask you what's happened in Detroit, and even if you don't live in Detroit, you can pretty well tell me what's happened in downtown Detroit or one of the suburbs over any given day. Even then, it's only a very bare minimal highlight and basically dog and pony bread and circus show. But if I ask that same person,